Mitch versus Andre Lima. Mitch currently has a record of 9 wins and 1 loss. If you want to be specific, he actually has 2 losses. He lost in the Ultimate Fighter via unanimous decision, so that won't count as an official MMA fight. But he did lose by rear naked choke straight after in the Dana White Contender Series. Sadly, he moved back to the local scene. But he fought for 2 years in the local scene, became undefeated and finished all of his fights. Now he officially obtained the UFC contract and plans to rekindle his dream. If you don't know Andre Lima, he's the winner of disqualification. The best disqualification in UFC history. The biting incident.
Single leg and accidentally just scraped him with my teeth.
Yeah.
Oh, I remember back.
Oh, jeez.
Oh, okay, yeah,
my
come on
God.
now.
See that.
Okay.
Never mind.
See that, okay.
That's all I need to say. Not sure how to MMA math this one. That fight was his UFC debut, so it will be quite even on who is going to win. Eileen Perez versus Jocelyn Edwards. Eileen is famously known as the UFC female fighter that has the OnlyFans. That might not be specific enough. She is the one known for celebrating her wins by twerking in front of her son. Despite that, she is still quite a good fighter. She may need to avoid the ground as the fight progresses. Jocelyn might not win this one. She is currently 4-3 in the UFC, and 2 of her wins are by split decision. Those 2 wins are also factoring in that she came in overweight as well. The best Jocelyn can do is keep utilizing her height advantage and possibly her weight advantage if the pattern follows. Keeping distance and just cover enough for another split decision win. That's all I can think of. Mickey Gall versus Basil Havers. Mikey has a record of 7 wins and 5 losses. He's been in the UFC for a very long time actually, but he also has a 2-loss streak going on. He also has never won a fight via TKO or KO. He's got some decision wins and some submission wins though. So if Basil can keep the fight on the ground, he could be sweet. Basil is coming in with 8 wins and 4 losses. He has only fought once in the UFC, and I don't really blame him for that 1 loss. His opponent was JDM, a current top-ranked contender, and he just lost by split decision. He may come into his 2nd UFC fight really hungry and KO Mickey, but that's all speculation. Mickey has been the UFC longer, so it really shows how much experience he can actually apply on Basil to win. Nico Price versus Alex Morono. We finished the early prelims, now for the normal prelims. Nico Price is quite the veteran fighter, showing his age. I don't mean literal age because he's only 34. I'm talking about his chin age. Losing 4 fights in his last 5 and probably just wants the paycheck now. His recent loss was the 1-minute round 1 KO by Robbie Lawler, and that was his retirement fight. His opponent Alex Morono seems to be a slight favorite by comparison. They actually fought before where Nico won by KO. It was overturned as a no contest as he was tested positive for Mary Jane. So this fight could be personal for both of them, and they want to make it an exciting fight. It just took 7 years to finally matchmake it. Phil Rowe versus Jake Matthews. Phil Rowe's most recent fight was against the gatekeeper Neil Magny. With that being said, it was just a split decision loss. He currently has 10 wins and 4 losses under his record and wants to prove to himself he is still proficient enough for the top 15. He fights Jake Matthews, who is, although younger than Phil, has fought a lot longer in the UFC. He was in the UFC since 2014. He debuted in the UFC at the age of 20. This would be a good tight matchup, seeing how much Phil Rowe really has to offer for the welterweight division, and to also see if Jake Matthews still has it with his experience. Grant Dawson versus Joe Solecki. Grant Dawson sadly being pushed back after his fumble. His KO fumble that derailed the hype train sadly. Came in with 20 wins and 1 loss last year, wanting to break into the top 15 lightweights. Sadly got stopped by a 1-minute KO by Bobby Green. It was definitely hype for the moment and was one of the craziest non-ranked fights. It just goes to show how many levels there are to this. He will be fighting Joe Solecki for a redemption fight to see if he still got it, and we'll try to move up from there. Grant lost badly, but he will most likely not lose this one. He's still a strong prospect to consider. He fights Joe Solecki, who is still a good fighter, but recently got brutally KO'd as well. They are both more dominant on the ground, so it would be a jiu-jitsu match most of the time. Jiu-jitsu or wrestling, either one. And seeing Grant Dawson through the resume and style lens only, he should win this one. Cesar Almeida versus Roman Kopylov. Cesar Almeida. If you don't know this guy, I'll try to make you remember him. He's a kickboxer, and he won one time over Alex Pereira. Sadly, he lost 2 times by Pereira too. But that one time is still something to brag about. He fights in the middleweight division of the UFC and is still undefeated for MMA. His first real UFC debut was against Dylan Bodka, who he TKO'd in the 2nd round, gaining a performance bonus as well. He fights Roman Kopylov, who is also extremely good at kickboxing, having all of his UFC wins by KO. But sadly, his record in the UFC is 4-3, so it's not too crazy. Regardless, it should be a kickboxing fight between these two, and that means it can go either way. Roman is a tough stand-up fighter, so it won't be that big of a loss if Cesar loses his O against him. Randy Brown versus Elezu Zaleski dos Santos. Now we dive into the main card, starting off with Randy Brown versus Dos Santos. Randy Brown is doing good for himself so far, where he only has 1 loss in his last 7 fights. And that loss was against JDM, so you kinda have a second chance card for that. I'll be perfectly honest and say I don't know too much about these two fighters where I can give a more detailed approach to the matchup. Dos Santos is aged 37 in the welterweight division and is 4 inches shorter than Randy Brown, 5'11" compared to 6'3". He hasn't completely lost it though, having still a great recent fight record. But with his age and the most recent fight being a draw, he might hit his physical peak and the downfall might happen. I said might. If you are a bit bored, Dos Santos was the guy that fucked up Sean Strickland many years ago. So there you go. Jailton Almeida versus Alexander Romanov. Also speaking of bored, we have another Almeida in the card. It just sucks because he's the complete opposite of Cesar Almeida. Jailton kinda has the Grant Dawson treatment where they are reassessing his skill as a fighter against someone lower. Alexander Romanov is quite a bad matchup. For Romanov, of course. But yeah, in all fairness, if I was a matchmaker, I would not care who fights who in the heavyweight division. Seeing the recent news and all that. Just have something going, please. I think they just found 2 ranked heavyweights who is readily available to suit a main card, and there you go. Alexander is a good fighter and is respectable for his ranking of 13th contender. But Almeida just does what he does best and will ragdoll him to a unanimous decision. I have not seen the betting odds yet, but if you bet your house on Almeida by decision, you can win back about $10 profit. Kevin Holland versus Mikhail Oleksiejczuk. Kevin Holland returns to their middleweight and fights Mikhail. I feel like Kevin Holland doesn't really know what to do in his career. It even looks like he lost motivation concerning some fans as well. He's a top fighter, but he definitely isn't good enough to be at the very top. So he's probably just cruising his career, making the most out of it and then leave. It's a good matchup in terms of resume for him to fight Michael. He's probably like rank 20-ish, and he's won a few times and lost a few times. His only recent losses were against Michel Pereira and Kyle Borraro, who are quite big fighters currently. I wouldn't be surprised if Kevin Holland wins this, but also not surprised if he loses this one too. I just hope he can leave off with a banger later on in the next couple of years when he retires. And let's not forget he threatened to retire after that Chimaev loss. Sean Strickland versus Paulo Costa. Now we reach the big fights. Number 7 ranked Costa versus number 1 ranked Strickland. It's a weird matchup where Costa recently lost and now is trying to move up, and Robert Whittaker, who just bet Costa, is fighting a lower ranked fighter, Chimaev. Especially after some crazy Costa and Chimaev beef a while ago, but it's confirmed and nothing we can do about it. They are both proficient on the feet and will most likely stay that way the whole fight. Sean is a little bit more efficient in his style where he can probably outdo Costa in every way until the end of round 5. But Paulo Costa is quite good too, but only if Costa utilizes his skills to the max. If he can do some unpredictable and crazy Brazilian shit, he might pull an Alex Pereira and flash knock him for a finish. Just like he did against Whittaker, but the timer ran out. But similarly to the Whittaker fight, Sean can also be really durable. Make Costa gas out and just dominate him straight after. Slight favorite to Sean Strickland on paper, but everyone would rather see this as an exciting fight and not that competitive. I don't think any of these guys' stocks will go down if one of them loses. Islam Makhachev versus Dustin Poirier. The title fight with many curses applied to it. So much emotion is going into this fight because of its nearing date, but let's keep it simple. After the community has their little emotional dump on Dustin making this his final fight, social media in the last 24 hours has accepted reality once again. Just last week, everyone wanted Dustin to win despite the odds because everyone loves an underdog and he really deserves the champion bout. But now we are in fight week and the date is very near. Tweets and prediction videos are out to say Islam definitely wins this. Let's start off with the curses. Dustin has the 0-3 curse on him right now, where your third title shot does not end well. He has the over 35 curse for his weight division. You will always lose your championship title match if you are 35 or older. But Islam has the Paulo Costa curse, where if Costa is in the card, the champion will lose his bout. And even worse, he gets finished. 100% chance of happening so far. Okay, yeah, let's move on. We tend to give shit to girls who loves personality tests and astrology, but this is so much worse where us boys factor in fabricated patterns for our sports betting addiction. Islam is better than Dustin in every way, simply put. The only actual reasonable thing to wonder is how Islam boxes. Close ranged and just swinging good, especially against another southpaw. Because the last time that happened... Yeah, but also Islam is a different animal compared to many years ago.